Hello everyone and welcome to the next part in this introductory video series. Last time we went over basic movement across the grid, the battle grid, attacks, dodging, and the general kind of basic flow of combat. This time we'll be looking at slow actions and spells. So I have another battle kind of set up here, this time with two different characters. Up top we have Rikus, who is a dragon kind, wielding a large great sword, a claymore in fact. And down toward the south, we have a demon-kind pyromancer, has the ability to cast fire pyromancy spells. And in this situation, I guess you could say Rikus walked up and found that his comrade here each is being besieged by two giant rats. They're going to try and get out of this situation. So I've already rolled for initiative and kind of set it up here. First in this combat is Rikus. So, unlike in the previous video where both of the player characters had lighter weapons, kind of faster weapons, Rikus is wielding a massive claymore. Instead of taking 3 AP to swing his weapon, it actually takes 4 AP. But instead of dealing a d6 of damage, his claymore deals a d10. With his strength, it's actually a d10 plus 5. So, slower weapon, takes a bit more of his turn to swing it, but considerably more damage. So Rikus is all the way up here. Getting back into the actual combat, Rikus could move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces all the way down here and make one attack on this rat. But an alternate strategy that Rikus has now is, instead, he could move 4 spaces to here, and he could initiate what is known as a heavy attack. When you initiate a heavy attack, it costs 1 more AP than your light attack, so it'll cost exactly 5 AP, which is how much Rikus would have left. You would put a little icon on Rikus to denote that he is performing a slow action. And heavy attacks are slow actions because they do not resolve until the start of your next turn. Rikus moving 4 spaces, initiating a heavy attack, means that at the start of his next turn, he will start his turn with the resolution of that heavy attack. Why would you want to deal a heavy attack? It does a lot more damage. Instead of dealing a d10 plus 5 for 4 AP, Rikus' heavy attack will deal 3d10 plus 5. So each heavy attack with a weapon gets 2 extra bonus damage die. On top of that, heavy attacks with weapons also deal poise damage. They deal poise damage equal to the AP cost of the light attack of the weapon. So in Rikus' case, because his claymore takes 4 AP to make a light attack with, his heavy attack will deal 4 poise damage. Now, poise damage is kind of like a status effect. We briefly touched on poison status buildup in the last video and how as it kind of builds up and you take more and more of it, eventually you reach a threshold and an adverse effect happens. Same thing with poise. Take enough poise damage, you reach the poise threshold, your character or monster or whoever is taking this damage gets staggered. Staggered is a condition that is devastating. Not only does the staggered creature lose their next turn in combat, they are unable to take actions during that entire period. The next attack on a staggered creature also deals double damage. So, staggered is something you want to avoid at all costs, and something you want to do to your adversaries if you can. So, Rikus' heavy attack, extra damage, poise damage. If you deal enough poise damage, the creature is staggered. On top of that, every single individual instance of poise damage causes a creature to lose 1 AP from their next turn. So if Rikus can get this heavy attack off, first things first, it deals a ton more damage. And if that doesn't kill whatever it hits, it deals poise damage, which could stagger the thing. If it doesn't get staggered, it took poise damage, so it's going to have less AP on its next turn. So multiple devastating potential effects happening from a heavy attack. So that'll be what Rikus does. He initiates a heavy attack with his claymore and ends his turn. Next up will be this rat here that's right next to each. This rat is going to bite at each. Now each being a learned combatant, somebody who has fought these rats before, know that The most devastating of their attacks is their jump attack. Their little nibbles that they do to you are not so bad. And he sees that there is another rat coming up right next in initiative. It looks like there's a good chance that rat is going to do its jumping attack. So each is going to stay here and not dodge. So this rat's going to attack each a few times for a total of 4 damage. That'll be the rat's whole turn. The next rat will go, and sure enough, just as predicted, the rat will start off its turn with a jump attack, jumping 2 spaces, burying its fangs down on each. And this is each's opportunity. He's going to dodge back 1 space. He's going to put this icon on himself to denote that he has already dodged. And then the rat will finish off its turn by moving 1 more space and nibbling at each for an extra 2 damage. Now comes each's turn. He will remove the icon from his character, indicating that he's getting his dodge back. He will spend his dodge cost, and he will examine the situation here. Now, this is the second kind of topic of this video here, which is casting spells. Each is a spellcaster. He has a casting implement that allows him to cast spells. Each spell has a unique effect, has a unique AP cost, and also an FP cost. And each of those spells, if they deal damage, get scaling, a bonus damage from the spellcasting implement. In each's case, he has a pyromancy flame in order to cast his pyromancy magic, and he has access to a number of fire pyromancy spells. Now, the first thing each wants to do is, he knows from fighting these rats that they dodge backwards. So if he can threaten this rat, cause it to dodge back here, he will set up Rikus so that when Rikus' heavy attack goes off, the rat that he targets with it will not be able to dodge again. The first thing each is going to do, he's going to throw a basic fireball at this rat. Fireball costs 2 AP and 2 FP. It can be thrown up to 15 feet. It's a ranged spell. And it deals 1d6 plus his casting implement scaling fire damage. But he knows that he will throw this fireball. He will tell the GM that he is threatening this rat with the fireball, that the rat is going to jump back 1 space and avoid it. Now, each is going to turn and face the second rat, his second problem here. For this rat, he will look at his spells list and come up with another plan. He has the spell Fire Surge. Fire Surge costs 4 AP, and it costs as much FP as you want to spend. Depending on how much FP you spend, Fire Surge deals 2d2 damage, fire damage, for each FP. The other important detail about Fire Surge is it has a 10-foot range, but it threatens every grid space up to its maximum range. So not only is Fire Surge going to threaten the rat directly in front of each, but also the space directly behind the rat. You can kind of see where this is going. Each, again, having fought these rats, knows their behavior, knows that if he threatens this rat, it's going to dodge back. So, each is going to spend 4 AP to cast Fire Surge. And then he really wants to take care of this rat, so he's going to spend 5 FP to deal 10d2 plus his scaling fire damage. In this instance, it will be 10d2 plus 2 fire damage. So he tells the GM, I am threatening this rat with a Fire Surge. The rat, sure enough, will dodge backwards. Not only is the rat's dodge expended now, but it still gets hit by this spell. The spell deals 10d2 plus 2 fire damage, for a total of 18 fire damage, completely burning this rat into smoldering ashes. Now, that costed a lot of each's resources, so he's going to end his turn there. Next up is Rikus. Rikus, having been set up by each, has a target directly right next to him that has already dodged. So his heavy attack will resolve. He can then choose a target for his heavy attack. So he will turn and make his heavy attack on this rat, doing 3d10 plus 5 damage. A devastating blow, which will deal 23 physical damage to the rat, completely destroying it. Now, they have pretty easily and swiftly dealt with these rats, but something to note, because Rikus spent the AP cost for his heavy attack on the end of his last turn, he actually has not spent any AP on this turn. So even though he's already killed a creature, if there were other monsters around and this battle was continuing, Rikus would have his entire turn left to take actions with. Fantastic. So, combat is done. We've learned about spells, we've learned about heavy attacks, but there's one last thing to go over. Spells, like weapons, have the ability to perform a slow action version of the spell, or at least most spells do. This slow action version of a spell is known as a charged spell. So each can charge those spells instead of casting the regular version of it, turning them into a slow action, causing him to end his turn when he does so, when he initiates it, and resolving on the start of his following turn. Now, charged spells will also deal an extra 2 damage die of damage. So instead of 1d6, that fireball will deal 3d6, for example. But instead of dealing poise damage, spells have an extra secondary effect. So that fire surge that each used, if he were to have used the charged version of fire surge, instead of dealing poise damage, that fire surge will have dealt extra damage and had its range increased by double. So a charged fire surge would actually threaten 4 grid spaces. A charged fireball, on the other hand, again, deal extra damage. Instead of poise damage, a charged fireball also hits all grid spaces adjacent to the target space. So if each were to throw a fireball at a rat over here, and the rat could still dodge, no matter where the rat dodged, as long as the dodge was only within 1 grid space, it would still hit the rat with the area of effect of that charged fireball. Cool. So, in the last video, we learned about moving, basic light attacks, dodging, learning monster behavior. In this video, we learned about heavy attacks and charged spells, as well as spell casting in general, how it uses AP and FP. And with all of that in mind, that is a pretty good overview of the basic combat mechanics of Souls D20. Now, as characters level up, as monsters get more powerful, more abilities will be added into the fray. Characters will be able to bend some rules, add additional things, add conditions depending on how they build themselves out with synergizing ability, add objectives to their playstyle. Monsters will have more complex abilities, harder to dodge, harder to identify their behavior perhaps, or even more intelligent behavior, and so on and so forth. But this is the basics for which Souls D20 builds up. In the next video, we will go over building an actual character. So we will start with a low-level character and go through the steps of making a character and getting used to how to level up, how to invest your points, and find the abilities that are right for your character. So, looking forward to talking to you guys about that soon. Goodbye.